Hello and welcome to the final challenge tutorial video of the Shoot and Share challenge. I've put day 4. That's interesting. That should say day 5. Contrast. So today we are going to be looking at how to get contrast into our photographs. So let's have a look what we've got. The first thing that we can look at is colour. Brits and Americans spell it different, so I've put both up there. So before you tell me I've spelt it wrong, you have both spellings. We are going to look at how colour can cause contrast. You see here, this white seagull with his bright orange beak stands out beautifully against the blue sky. There's no question of where the definition of where the difference is between his beak, between his feathers, between the sky. So that colour makes him really stand out. If he was on like grey paving slabs, or if he was on a wall like the colour of my shirt, he wouldn't show up as much. But because the bright blue is so very different, he contrasts. Equally, if we've got leaves against the sky, or using a coloured piece of paper or coloured card that you put behind them to change the background. It doesn't always have to be everything you see. If it's too cluttered, you can, especially if it's something quite small, you can hold something else up. So I could put a purple book I've got here in behind my hand. My hand's going to show up so much more. If that was just the photo, you'd never know it was a book if you were just looking at the purple. In fact, I should probably make that bigger. Let's do that, shall we? Like, if you just took a photo of my hand and the purple, my hand's going to show up really well and contrast as well. So we can play with using colour, but here do you also see they have used light. So the light is picking out the leaf and making the veins glow through it. If there wasn't light shining directly on that leaf, the sunlight against this sky, then it would not be glowing. As we've seen this one. The other thing that you can do to contrast is you can use slightly different colours. So these are autumn leaves, which I don't think anybody's in autumn at the moment, but they're against a wooden surface and the wood's a lot darker than the leaves, especially with the light, and then the light is bouncing and reflecting. Like if you look here, I can block the light of the on my face and I'm in shadow, or I can take my hand and I can, do you see that? I can brighten and bounce the light on my face and open up how much light I have there. So this leaf is bouncing the light down onto the wood, and that creates a real sense of contrast. Here, these leaves, the light's coming top down, but it's completely dark underneath them. So those leaves shining in the light against the darkness behind them. So if you've got really, really bright light and you expose for the brightest bit of the light, so you make it focus on the very brightest bit of the picture. So you know when Levi, you had those bright leaves that were really exposed, and Josh, you had that bright dog leg. No, Josh, you're in the teenagers. When you focused on those bright leaves, Levi, you focused on the shadowy ones. If you focused on the bright ones, all the rest would go into deep shadow, and you get this effect where there's the bright leaves are now the right colour because the camera's gone, oh, I need these to be focused correctly, and everything else drops black behind it. The same's happened here. It's in darker woods, and this yellow coat is reflecting the light, probably of a flash gun, and so everything else has gone dark behind us. So this yellow coat really shines out. We can also do this with light and shadow. So he's got white light coming across one side of his face. So if I was to like turn my light off, I've got bright light coming through the window and I'm in shadow on this side. Not so much because the sun's getting a bit less bright at the moment, it's behind a cloud. But if it was really bright, then this would appear almost black on the other side. So if you get a light source quite close to something and lighting it up, then everything on the opposite side will appear in contrast to that really shadowy. Or you can backlight. Backlight means putting the light behind the subject. So this dog, the sun is the other side of the camera. So the camera, then the dog, then the light. And you've not got the bright sun bit growing out the top of his head because they've made sure that where the actual sun is behind his head. So he's now got what we call rim lighting. Rim lighting is where it glows around the edges because the light's coming towards you and can only get past the object where it's thin or where there's space and gaps, which is what's happening around the dog's fur here. Some contrast, however. So we've looked at how contrast can be with colour. it can be with light and dark. But now, what do you think this is? What's the difference? What's contrasting in this photo? What do you think? Well, it's old and new. So we have here, this building is old brick building with the old-fashioned fascia down the, the fancy bits and the brick wall, and they've stuck a poster over it. And that's an old building in the middle of a city where they've put up a tower block which is made with modern metal and glass. So the contrast here is metal and glass versus old brick and mortar building. Another way of contrasting here is the old versus the new in a different way. So this is photography. New, it's a memory card. That's what we put in our cameras. Old, it's films. That's what we used to put in our cameras. So if you've got something like, for instance, notes, money notes versus a bank card, or maybe a ink pen and paper versus a tablet with a note document open on it, how you write your homework out, on digital versus like the old-fashioned analog, the pen and paper. So there's different ways we can contrast, and as well, texture. So here the contrast is between the lush green growing field and the brown of the sandy, soily dirt with no vegetation growing in it. And then they've made sure, don't forget, to still think about your composition, the angle that you're taking your photos from, how you're going to stand. So don't forget to move with your feet as well as zoom with your camera. And things like rules of thirds and diagonals, these all still come into play. So although we're looking at contrast, I still want you to think about composition. So here I have the contrast. There's a couple of different contrasts going on here. So you've got the transition of light in the top left coming down to dark in the bottom right. You've got that transition of greens in the background contrasting versus the bright pink of these flowers. And you've also got the contrast of the texture, the frilliness of the petals, the pink petals, they're frilly, versus the sharper shape of the leaves. So another one of this same flower in the bush, you can see the spikes, the thorns on what it's growing on. I think they're roses, but I'm not 100% sure. But if they are, they'd be rose thorns. You've got the contrast of the leaves with the veins in versus the soft, bright pink flower. You've also got the contrast of where the leaves are picked out, they've got sharp, scraggy edges, whereas where they're disappeared and the sun's really bright, and so you've lost them because they're whited out and they've lost all of that colour and it's just like been too bright, they sort of disappear into floatiness. So you've got the shape that gives contrast, the colour that gives contrast there. Just to give you another idea where you can see a lot more of the leaves in focus and the different flowers. Here, it's the pink flower versus the white flower. But do you remember when I said when something's in full sun, so this flower is in bright sunshine, all of the tree behind it has now gone dark, dark green. So instead of having the sun shining through it with the paler green leaves we saw before, now the background has gone dark. So this was literally choosing a different flower and moving my view and looking into the bush rather than up through the bush. The first ones I was looking up at them towards the sky, and this I'm looking backwards into the bush. And here you've got the contrast of the smooth round lapels of this privet leaves versus the sort of the white tiny little flowers. And you've still got a diagonal coming up, and you've got the darkness, the white contrasts against the dark, the shadowiness in the background. So these are all in sun, and the shadow at the back in the tree is in darkness. So once you've taken your photos, again, you're going to be looking to do something with contrast. So you can do contrast as a reminder. You can use colour. You can do it with light and dark. You can do it with old and new. You can create the contrast with texture, with your composition. So they could have something really jaggedy on one side and something really smooth on the other side of the photo. You get to choose how you do it. What I want you to do, though, is choose something that shows us that contrast. And don't forget all of the things we've learned before. Once you've chosen your subject and you can see the contrast, I want you to think about your composition. I want you to consider rule of thirds. Where are you going to place the object in the frame? Don't forget about framing and filling the frame with it. Don't have it tiny, unless the contrast is there's something massive and something tiny, 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 because that would be a contrast. Big versus small. There's many ways you can do it, but that is your challenge. And again, if you don't have time to put them on Facebook, you can always email tutor@lizziebiggs.co.uk with the photos, and I will upload them for you. But otherwise, this, my friends, is our last training session of the challenge, of this free challenge, where you got to go through and learn some interesting photography concepts, be challenged to take photos every day, play some games, meet some people on the Zoom calls, and have some fun. While doing it, hopefully, learn to use your camera a bit. So going forward, tomorrow we have our last Zoom call, which is on Saturday, 27th June, and that is at the same time of 5:15 p.m. here in the UK. And so I think that's like, let's stop sharing the screen. Let me just double check. I think that is, I have the Facebook here somewhere that will tell me in the events tab, because I've already set it up, what time it is in foreign time zones. Same as today, basically, though. So it is... it only shows my time zone on the events. Doing well, doing well. Well, on the website it does say, and I will make sure that in the comments on this post, what I'll do is I'll write it down for you. That solves it, doesn't it? That's going to be a lot quicker than me looking for it here. Because my head's just had a time zone problem. But if we are 5, I know that that means it's 9:15 in Pacific time. There we go. So that means it's 10:15 in Mountain, it's 11:15 in Central, and it is 12:15 in Eastern. Got there in the end. Perfect. Now, if any of you are still around with us, I know some can't make this call, but don't worry, that won't affect your points total so long as you are here for our final one next week on Monday. We are going to be doing our final call, which is the bonus points. All of your ninja points are coming together, and it's going to be the prizes, and we are going to let you know what you might have won, making sure that people, no matter what country they are in, still have the opportunity to win a prize. Now, if anybody is feeling really sad that we are pretty much finished, that it is over, then please don't feel too sad, because we have an opportunity. The Shoot and Share Academy is relaunching. It is going to be a weekly group. I believe we are looking, unless all the members say otherwise and don't feel it's a fitting time, it is going to be on a Thursday, and that will be at, for the 8s to 12s, that will be at 5:30 p.m. So 5:30 p.m. UK time, which means 9:30 Pacific, 10:30 Mountain, 11:30... this is testing my knowledge. Central, and 12:30 Eastern. 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes, perfect. And it's going to be for about an hour and a half session. We will have the same fun elements, but it will all be done on the Zoom call. So during the Zoom call, you'll show up and we will be able to do some fun games and stuff. We'll look at any photos that you've submitted from last week that we hadn't seen yet, if you hadn't had a chance to upload them or get them to us. But what we will do is we will do some live teaching, so you can ask questions as I go. While I'm doing this discussion and showing you the photos, you can put your hands up and say, oh, I like this one. What happened there? Can you tell me about this bit? Or can I use a photo of my teddy bear? Or can I use a torch? Or any of those kind of questions we will ask you, so you can talk about them live, and then you will get a chance to go off while we are still on the call, go and take the photos and come back and share with us what you took, what you found, and what you'd like to experiment later. We'll have some ongoing projects, like we'll have a theme for each month, and there will be the chance for your parents, if you would really like to know more about this and your parents want to have a chance to ask some questions or would like to know about the pricing and how to sign you up, then there's going to be a separate call. I will probably do 2 of these question and answer calls, one later this evening for those who are working in America, and one tomorrow daytime for those who are in Britain and who are not available on Friday night, as it's an awkward time. And then if you've still got any questions, you can email in and I'll have the recording of that video for you available so you can get the information. So yeah, that's everything. Thank you so much for joining us, and I can't wait, guys, to see you again in our next Zoom call, which is Saturday, 5:15, which is 9:15 Pacific time. So we will see you then. Take care and bye for now.